I'm Will Aubrey. My buddy Joe Darnell alongside me here. Welcome to this edition of the Improbability Engine. And we'll start with our moment of what? Give me yours, Joe.
Okay, well, mine comes from the area of college basketball. When we last spoke, we spoke of Grayson Allen, the young player who got in trouble for tripping players as he got beat on defense. And he was subsequently suspended indefinitely. Fast forward to yesterday, and Coach Mike Krzyzewski for Duke is out with getting back surgery. He's going to be unable to play. And lo and behold, Grayson Allen's suspension has been lifted. It was only a one-game indefinite suspension, and it just made me go, what?
That was my moment of what.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. But to me, it was a situation where, and it's what I expected, but it's a situation where I thought a lot of people would be up in arms and upset over it, and certainly a lot were. But if you think about it, Draymond Green did essentially the same thing and got a one-game suspension in the NBA Finals. If a game is enough for Draymond Green, it ought to be enough for this kid who goes to Duke.
Yeah, the difference is in the quantity of times it's happened. I think Draymond Green, he has a history of flailing a little bit and catching guys, and hurting them in such a way that they can't play. Grayson Allen there's no two ways about it. He's intentionally tripping players and has done it multiple times and has been called out, has been suspended for individual incidents, and he just keeps doing it. And there comes a point where you got to make a stand, right?
Well, and, they did. They suspended him a game, and I'm fine with that. Hopefully he won't do it again. Actually, to be honest, I wouldn't have suspended him, but that's just me.
Understandable. I would, if I were a coach, I'd have to suspend him. I
thought it was kind of comical watching it, but but then Dennis Rodman was my favorite player, so you got to understand where I'm coming from.
That explains a lot. Yeah. Dirty. Excuse me. I have a little cough there. Last night Murray State played.
Yes.
They moved to 2-0 in conference. They've beaten the two hottest teams in the OVC. Maybe not the two best teams, but certainly two of the better resumes and out of conference. They played Tennessee State and won. Big game. Tennessee State's very good, although afterwards Tennessee State lost at Kennesaw State, so go figure there. Then they go down to Jacksonville State and take on a team that had beaten Tulsa. They were a top 100 RPI team.
They were actually favored over Murray State by 4 points.
Yeah, and Murray State goes in there and wins and beats someone who's pretty familiar with the Racers in the coaching box, former Western Kentucky University coach Ray Harper, who Murray State fans gave a hard time because of his backing out of continuing the Murray State versus Western game in an attempt to save his job, according to our perspective. I have no idea if that's true or not. So I guess he's finding out now that you can't dodge Murray State if you're in the conference.
I guess so. I have some cognitive dissonance with regard to the Racers.
Okay.
On the one hand, I saw them in person get run out of the gym late against Wright State.
Yep.
And so when I'm thinking of that, I think, gee, they're not really very good. On the other hand, they're 2-0 in the conference. I saw them hit 3 after 3 after 3 last night, and that makes me think, dang, they're pretty darn good. So I have some cognitive dissonance there. Here's what I believe. I believe they are not very good defensively, and I believe that they are potentially very good offensively. The way they're going to have to win is the way they won last night. They're going to have to make a lot of threes.
Or get into a situation where they can drive to the basket and draw contact and fouls. In the OVC, that's always a real possibility.
That's true.
So you talk about the Wright State game. Will, I have to point something out to you. That happened last year. I mean, it's a whole new year, whole new ball game. I think you're right though in your assessment when you talk about Murray State. Defensively, they're a work in progress on their good days. I mean, they really are. But what you've gotten now is you've got these freshmen, a lot of freshmen who are going to be counted on to give a lot of minutes. Last night it was Gilbert Thomas, it was Jalen Dupree. You watch these bigs, and they're just now starting to get what they're supposed to be doing. And these are talented basketball players, but college basketball is not easy.
That's true. Now, of course, neither Thomas or Dupree start.
Right.
And I have a friend who says they're like a donut. They don't have anything in the middle. And if you look at starting center in last night's game, he played 11 minutes, did not get a rebound, did not score, and had 3 turnovers. And that's not really too far away from what an average performance from him is like.
Well, there are 2 different ways to defend this team. Let's flip it around and look from the defensive side. Okay, you've got a team in Murray State that has the ability to put 4 guys who can shoot on the outside.
Right.
All day long, and if they're hitting, watch out because all 4 of those guys are streaky. You look at Miller, Stark, Jones has started coming on now. I think he's probably about a 38% three-point shooter. I think that's where he's going to settle. He was way below that earlier in the year. I think now he's starting to get his rhythm into it. But you've also got a guy like G. McGee who can hit streaky. He'll hit 4 or 5 in a row, might miss 3 or 4. But you have that ability. You've got those guys who are able to shoot. So you've got to make your decision if you're a defensive team. Do you step out and try to guard those guys with extra men? Do you do it in a man? Do you try to do it in a 3-2 zone? Do you try to, how do you put pressure on the shooters? You know that they're going to come out with screens. They're going to roll off screens and try to drive. So do you pack it in and say, no, we're going to switch every screen, even though that might open you up for an open 3 later on or a mismatch down low? I think what we're seeing now is you're starting to see how the offense should work. Have the ability to shoot outside, have the ability to dribble penetrate. If you can dribble penetrate, even if the defense collapses, you should have a kick out. And if you've got guys out there who can shoot, then you're good. If you've got a stretch 4 and he gets the ball on the baseline extended or the elbow extended and there's pressure that steps out, he can make a pass down to Breon Sanchez, to Jalen Dupree, and all they have to do is lay it in. Now, don't expect it to happen much. Don't expect it to happen, 10 times a game. But you've got to have the threat there. And I think they're going to get into that.
But they don't or have not had the threat to this point. And what other teams do is they pressure the perimeter because they know that if the ball goes down low, Sanchez isn't going to shoot in all likelihood.
Right.
And as a result, the Racers have had games where they do not shoot the 3 well. And one of the big reasons for that is they don't get standstill, wide open 3s. The 3s they get are 3s that have to be created.
Right.
And as a result, sometimes those shots aren't going to fall because they're not as good a shot.
Right. And now that's where the dribble penetration comes in. If you've got your posts coming up and then they come out to set screens and you've got your guards going in, you've effectively inverted the field.
Right.
You've got guys like DeMarcus Croker taking guards down low. I take that 9 times out of 10.
I agree.
That man can absolutely jump out of the gym. Now,
by the way, I was glad he was not hurt last night. I mean, it looked like he was injured. Then he comes back into the game.
Yeah, I think everybody who was watching kind of goes, they held their breath in that situation. Because we saw it with Dante Poole. Those guys who can really jump, there's a lot of things that can happen in a basketball game that can hurt them. But when you get that dribble penetration, you put those guys on the outside, you turn the defense and invert it. Now if you're running McGee as your 3, he can dribble past a guy who's a big and go up against guys who are smaller and draw contact. Or you've got a guy like Miller who can shoot over a post player who's stepping out to guard him. Problem is you got to do both really effectively in order for the offense to work. And so far, they haven't had it all kind of clicked together. They had a really good game against Tennessee State, but it was basically all dribble penetration that did that. I mean, they hit some threes, but last night they didn't have a whole lot of penetration, not much scoring on the inside. They hit a ton of threes. I mean, 13 of 18 is
Well, and the one that
ridiculous.
Stark hit,
Oh, yeah.
it was about 30 feet.
Stark to me is good for one of those a game. He's going to take and hit a shot from Ashtabula. I mean, it's one of those. He's going to shoot from somewhere that you go, no! And when it goes in, you go, all right, that was a good shot.
Kind of reminds you of Isaiah Cannon.
Absolutely.
There was a game where Murray State was playing SEMO, and the guy who had guarded him, the guy from SEMO, I was asking him afterwards what it was like to guard Cannon, and he said, well, I thought I did a good job in the first half. Then in the second half, he started pulling from half court. I can't guard that.
That's it. And you know, that's what you want to do. You've got a guy like Stark who offensively is a special player. He's just special. He's a special basketball player. And I think every Racer fan needs to go out and watch him play, because you're only going to get him for a couple years, and he is fun to watch.
And he's averaging 21 points a game going into last night's game.
Yeah.
Now, people may not understand how impressive that is. There have been very few seasons when anybody averaged over 20 points a game for Murray State. I think Isaiah Cannon was 20 and change in 2012.
20.0 or 20.8 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I don't think Cameron Payne ever reached 20.0.
I don't think he did either. I think he was like 16 or 17 at his highest, and then 4 or 5 assists, which actually might have been 5 or 6 assists, which is a good combination. But you're right, the 20-point threshold, that's a big deal. I mean, you're talking Terry Mays, Marcus Brown,
Vincent Rainey
peak numbers. These are big-time scorers in Murray State history. They just don't come along like this very often. And what you're seeing now is the real threat that Stark has is he's a pretty decent point guard. I mean, he's a combo guard. He likes to score and he takes shots, and that's okay. He just does stuff that you watch him and you go, man, that kid can play.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he can play, just flat play. I'm excited, and if you haven't seen him play, I recommend everybody come out and check it out, because he is fantastic.
He truly is. Want to talk a little? Well, before we leave Murray State, they play at Tennessee Tech tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's a game they ought to win. They go in as a favorite according to the computer ratings.
Yeah.
The thing that you have to ask yourself is, how will they handle Prosperity? Because they're on a 2-game winning streak. Both games they were underdogs in.
Right.
So now that they've won 2 in a row, 2 that they were not expected to win, how will they react to that when they go play Tennessee Tech? They can't afford to let down at all.
Absolutely not. And you know, honestly, they've got, I believe, a 2-game lead in the East already. You just have to win the games you're supposed to win. If you do that, you'll be fine. You know what I mean? So this is the problem with inconsistent teams, is there's a lot of different ways that people talk about inconsistency as it comes to sports. The one that I always heard was playing to the level of their competition. That's a nice way of saying we're just inconsistent. We don't give consistent effort. We don't give consistent work.
At the beginning of the season, OVC Media Day, I was talking to Jay Spoonhour, the head coach at Eastern Illinois.
Comes from a very prestigious line of coaches. His father was a heck of a coach too, and he assisted. None more respected in the conference than Jay Spoonhour.
He told me his kids were inconsistent last year, and I asked him, well, how can you change that? And he said, well, it's not like they were inconsistent on purpose. They're not evil.
Right. Oh, God, that would be bad. No, and you know what? I think that's the biggest thing. I think what you're finding now is you've made that first semester transition for a lot of these guys. Their first semester at D1 basketball is tough on everybody. It's tough on everybody. Good players have trouble the first semester. Cameron Payne had trouble his first semester in college D1 basketball. Now, mind you, his level of trouble was different than a lot of other players' level. But once you know, everybody remembers his freshman year. when they talk about the highlights, they're really talking about his play in the second semester of his freshman year.
Absolutely.
And those guys, anybody can make that transition. I look for the freshmen and the newcomers. Miller starting to get it together. I think he's letting the game come to him. That's important for him. He doesn't need to force shots. They're gonna come to him. Shots are gonna happen. But earlier in the season, you saw him force threes or force post play into double teams. It's not what he needs to do. He just needs to let the flow come to him. And I like for the freshmen to make that step as well.
Let's talk about Callaway County basketball. And first, I want to talk about the boys. I was in Louisville last week broadcasting their games from Seneca High School, and
very respectable tournament, by the way.
The Wes Unseld Classic, and Wes Unseld was one of my heroes when I was a boy.
Right.
The first college basketball game I ever got to see, Louisville was playing Columbia, and Wes Unseld was on the Louisville team. So
wait a minute. On the floor, it was red, white, and Columbia blue. No wonder you're a Laker fan. I knew there was a good reason for that.
Anyway, the second day of the tournament, I took a basketball and I went to what they call the small gym. Well, that was the gym Unseld played in. Made a shot.
Well, of course you did.
And I told my buddy Randy McCallum about that, and he said, "Well, you outscored him in his own gym today."
Very true.
Because he wasn't there.
Very true.
So
he could have showed up.
He could have showed up. But anyway, had a great time up there. Callaway won the first two games. They beat a Caverna team that probably had the worst shot selection of any team I have ever seen. They constantly took challenged shots. They constantly took unnecessarily long threes. One of their players standing beyond the volleyball line just decided, I'm chucking it, and took the shot from beyond the volleyball line. But occasionally they'd hit 4 or 5 of these in a row. And so,
it's not much of a plan, but if it works,
So it turned out to be a really close game. Callaway, I think, won it by something like 8 points. Then, in the second game, they played Seneca on their home floor. They managed to hang on and win that. And they played Ballard in the championship game. And I was really proud of our kids for just getting the championship game.
Absolutely.
Ballard's an outstanding team, one of the top teams in the state of Kentucky. It was a 5-point game with a minute left in the first half. And then the wheels fell off, and Ballard won by 30. But I was really proud of our kids. Now, they have a huge night tonight. The Callaway boys are playing Marshall County at Jeffrey Gymnasium, and we are honoring the 2003 regional champions, the first regional champions in the history of Callaway County High School. Guys like Chase Futrell, Mitch McClure, Jimmy Bynum, Terry Adams. We'll be honoring those guys. Some really good players.
I remember my senior year in high school. They were freshmen, and everybody knew how good they were. I mean, my senior year, we had some talent. We had some length, some really decent players. But you watched those guys play, and you just knew that the future was bright. And lo and behold, it absolutely was. Those guys were fantastic. Just one of the better teams that the Lakers have ever put on the floor. Now, there might have been better individual players, but I can't think of a better 1 through 5 situation. I mean, you could make arguments, but boy, that was a good team.
Well, they were a very good team. They executed very well. But here's the thing that Terry Birdsong, who was the head coach then and is the head coach now, brought to Callaway basketball that I had not seen prior to that. Now, keep in mind, I didn't start until 95.
Right.
Okay? So, anyway, under his predecessor, Coach Green, who was a great tactician,
right,
those teams executed well. They had good shooters. But when they went up against teams like Paducah Tillman or a very talented team from Graves County,
right,
they did not have the toughness to finish. Okay? Terry's teams, right, they would take it right to the rim against a Paducah Tillman, and they were able to finish. And that, to me, the toughness that he instilled in those kids was the big difference in what put them over the top.
I remember to kind of illustrate that point, and I agree with you. The game that I remember was it was like '96, and I want to say it was Callaway versus Graves, and Josh McKeel was the starting center for Callaway. Now, Josh McKeel, everybody knows Josh, physical, very talented, long, 6'4" athletic guy, went on to play D1 football at Murray State, very talented athlete, heck of a basketball player too. And you talk about not being able to force the other team to deal with you and just dealing with the other team. I remember watching Josh McKeel get dunked on by a young man at Graves County named Jomo Dopwell. I've never seen anything like that because Josh McKeel is a big, tough, strong guy, and Dopwell just went right over the top of him, went through him, and just threw the ball down. It was a Jeffrey Gymnasium, and that didn't happen. And at that point, I knew, okay, well, it's been a good run, guys. There's not much you can do about that. But you're right. There was a mentality shift that happened after those years, where you have guys that can really go out there and make some things happen. You know, I mean, you've got to have that mentality, otherwise you don't win games.
Now, they play the Marshalls tonight. It will be a difficult game. Marshall County is extremely good. But, you know, I think the Lakers are capable. We need to see how Camden Price is.
Yeah.
Because Camden got hurt the other day against Mayfield.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to talk to the coach. There was some concern that maybe he had a concussion. And without Camden, it's a really tall order.
Agreed. Yeah. And you look at Callaway now, and they've got talent, and they're playing so well together. I mean, when they've got all their pieces on the floor, they're extremely talented. They remind me in some ways of a lot of the teams that Callaway's put out in the past. You know, I remember, you know, guys like Jeremy Bumpus and Trey Tyndall, guys like that who were just so incredibly talented they could take over a game. That's where Camden Price is. I mean, that's where this young man is. He is a type of player that can score in bunches. He does a lot of things, and he can exploit mismatches. And if he's not on the floor, it's going to be tough. I mean, it really is. So hope for his speedy recovery and that it's okay now, that he's going to be able to play tonight.
Now, the Callaway girls, I believe, are 13-1. They play Marshall County.
Lakers?
Now, Marshall County, Callaway's girls rank 4th in the region in the Cantrell power ratings, okay? So they're clearly a very good team. They've both played McCracken County. Mm-hmm. And Callaway beat McCracken 62-34.
Right.
Okay? Handled them pretty well. This is how good Marshall County is. 57-17 they beat McCracken.
You know what? It's hard to fathom that level of domination. I mean, women's basketball has that a lot of times. You'll find the talent gap between the haves and the have-nots. It happens in women's basketball far more than it does in men's basketball, it seems. But I'm here to tell you, that is hard to replicate. It is hard to dominate a team like that. To hold a team to 17 points. What do they have at half? Like 8, 16, 6 or something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think about how that happens. And they're a well-coached team.
Right.
McCartney,
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to give something to coaching. Just for showing up and saying, "Hey, look, we're going to hold the ball and slow it down and try to make this."
Now,
game.
Hannah Lange, she's the star at Marshall County.
Yeah.
She's going to be difficult to stop. But that's what they said last year. She didn't really make an impact against Callaway last year. It's going to be interesting. She didn't even play a whole lot in one of the games against Callaway last year. It's going to be interesting to see just how she plays against the Lady Lakers tonight. I think the Lady Lakers have a chance to win this game. Marshall's favored, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But what I want to see is Callaway come out and make a game of it and show they belong on the same floor with this team.
Absolutely. And for those familiar with the district setup, the difference between second and third is not huge, but understanding that opponent that you're going to play in the district tournament, that's a big deal.
Now,
You know what I mean? You got to be able to hit that.
absolutely. And talk about scores that just make you shake your head. The Lady Tigers at Murray High.
Yep.
Did you see what they did to Mayfield?
I did not.
They beat Mayfield by about 50, and they hit 15 threes.
Now, see, that's just unfair. I mean, you got somebody like Maddie Waldrop who's still coming back from her injury and kind of working up to speed, but we know what kind of player she is.
Right.
Oh, and then, by the way, we're also going to hit
15
threes. That's just not fair. I mean, maybe the region should impose a rule that says if you're a Murray High Tiger, you have to play on one knee or with a blindfold or I don't know. You got to have something.
Well,
I mean,
in the initial computer ratings that Dave Cantrell came out with, they were ranked, I believe, 12th in the state. And obviously, if they had Waldrop the whole time, they would be ranked higher.
Yeah, I think they're a top 5 team in the state. I mean, they're really that talented. And the big thought was always, well, do they have the shooting to compete? Well, if they've got the ability to hit 15 threes, yes, they have the shooting.
In
to compete.
past years,
yeah,
you could back off of them and take your chances.
Play a 2-3 zone and pack it in down low and hope for the best. Try to deny the ball, limit those chances. But if they can shoot like that, the region needs to watch out. I mean, that's whenever Waldrop gets fully healthy and then you add in their ability to shoot, it's tough. That's a tough team. I don't want to play them, but you got to.
Anything else on sports?
You know what? No, we're pretty good. We're in the hot stove league in baseball, and it's actually been a very cold stove league. Football is into the playoffs. Murray State got 2 quarterback signings coming in January, which are nice. A transfer from Old Dominion, who was a 4-star kid out of high school, coming in to play. He's going to be immediately eligible. And a freshman out of Middle Tennessee that apparently is the type of quarterback that you drool over, and some of the bigger teams in the country missed him. So we'll take that all day long. I really think that Murray State football is building to something pretty good.
That brings to a conclusion this edition of the Improbability Engine.
How are y'all? Good.